Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Talk on Nevada. I'm your host, Andy Matthews. And this week we're going to take a look back at the 2009 Nevada legislative session. And here to join us is Geoffrey Lawrence, a fiscal policy analyst with the Nevada Policy Research Institute. Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Andy.
Jeff, you were here a couple of weeks ago and we talked about the Interim Finance Committee and the fact that they're meeting now. And basically the way you put it is that the purpose of them getting together now is to try to find new ways to raise our taxes. And it's significant that this is coming on the heels of the 2009 legislative session, which had a real impact. It's going to have real significant ramifications for Nevada taxpayers. And you've got a new report out that looks back at the 2009 session. Tell us a little bit about what you found and how you went about putting together this report.
Well, this report it's called the 2009 Legislative Session Review and Report Card. It's basically it gives a recounting of the major debates that occurred during the session this time around, focusing mainly on fiscal issues, so tax and budget. And there was a lot of debate going on this session about that because economic recession and declining tax revenues. And the second part of this report is a report card on the individual performances of state legislators and how they did in protecting taxpayer interests.
I want to focus first on the first part of that, sort of the review, the recap of what happened in the session. What was the most obvious and significant outcome of that session for Nevadans?
Well, the most obvious outcome is the largest increase in tax history, a largest single session increase, about a 19% overall increase in the tax burden. So, at a time when this occurred at a time when people are losing their jobs en masse. Unemployment now is over 13%. At the outset of the session, it was climbing towards 10%. It was almost at 10%. So this was a tax burden that was hoisted on people when they could least afford it.
Now, one interesting thing you did that you mentioned here is that you actually went, legislator by legislator and actually rank and score their performance. How did you go about doing that in terms of methodology? What criteria did you use for this?
This is actually this is a methodology that's used by the National Taxpayers Union for ranking congressmen according to taxpayer interest. So it is widely regarded as the gold standard for this type of ranking, and it's a really useful ranking because it allows you to weigh the impact of each bill. So, for instance, the $781 million tax increase that was passed in the final week of the session had the largest impact of any single bill. And all these bills are weighted on a scale from 1 to 100. So that would be that bill was weighted at 100, and if you voted against the bill, then you got 100 points, and if you voted for it, then you didn't get 100 points, but 100 points are added to the denominator. So and all the other bills are basically taken as a percentage of they're scaled down as a percentage of that bill. So the final scores are measured in a percentage of the total number of bills you voted on versus which way you voted.
Tell us a little bit about what you did find with some of the particular legislators. There was some really interesting findings here when you actually go through the rankings. What struck you most?
Well, first of all, we should understand what the rankings actually mean. If you score 50% score according to the NTU methodology, that means you're completely ambivalent towards taxpayer interests. Above 50% means that you're supportive of the taxpayer, and below 50% means that you're kind of hostile towards the taxpayer. And there were only 11 legislators who scored above 50%, so that's pretty ominous when there are 63 of them overall. So 52 scored below, meaning that they were voting to increase the burden on taxpayers.
What about the partisan breakdown? I mean, I know that all 11 who happen to score above 50% were Republicans, generally regarded as the more taxpayer-friendly of the two major parties. But it looks like that the hostility to taxpayers isn't something that is isolated among Democrats or is unique among Democrats.
Well, yeah, the ideological divide goes much deeper than party lines, as these scores kind of demonstrate. The 11 who scored above above 50% range from about 58 up to about 96%. Now, when you go on the bottom side, the high score was 38%. So there was a very big divide and very few people in the middle, and a lot of Republicans were in the lower half. In fact, one of the things that really stands out is that Republican leadership was all scored below 50%, but both Assembly Minority Leader Heidi Gansert and Senate Minority Leader Bill Raggio. In fact, Minority Leader Bill Raggio and Senate Majority Leader Stephen Horsford were virtually indistinguishable in these scores. They were only about 2 percentage points apart. So it shows that the partisan leadership from both parties, especially in the Senate, were not looking out for the taxpayers at all.
So who wins the gold medal here? Who was the most taxpayer friendly? Who should taxpayers be sending a thank you card to, basically?
Well, if you want to send a thank you card, it should be addressed to Ed Goodhart, who's an Assemblyman from Amargosa Valley. Scored very high, 95.54%. Now, with the NTU standards, when they rank congressmen, no one has ever gotten a 100% score. So anything in the mid to high 90s is fantastic. In fact, that's in Congress, that's where the highest scores are. Usually either Ron Paul or Jeff Flake score highest in Congress. So Ed Goodhart here in Nevada could be compared to Jeff Flake, I guess.
In terms, to be fair, in terms of this particular session, given the massive budget deficit and the fiscal challenges we face, one could say that there probably wasn't a lot of opportunity for tax cuts. And I know that's one way that you can earn a higher score based on this model is by voting for bills that would actually cut taxes. A lot of that stuff really wasn't on the table during this session because of what was going on with the Nevada economy. So, is it a little bit unfair to judge these legislators poorly? Should we kind of take into consideration the unique dynamics that sort of help shape this legislative session?
Well, that's true. This session was kind of unique because of the unique fiscal situation. Tax revenues were in decline. And so there were very few options for tax cuts or significant spending cuts really weren't being proposed. However, some legislators managed to score extremely well. Ed Goodhart, for example, scored in the mid-90s. So did Don Gustafson. So they kind of give an example that even in this session, it was very possible to achieve a high score. And they set that example. Unfortunately, there were very few other legislators who followed it. What
do you think the outcome of this report is going to be? I mean, do you think there's a real chance here that voters are going to look at this and say, now I understand how my legislators are voting and whether they're on my side or they're on the side of bigger government? Is that sort of the goal here? Do you think it's going to have that kind of an impact?
Well, yeah, that is the goal. One of the problems that we've had in the past here in Nevada is there hasn't been this type of objective, detailed analysis of legislative performance. Now we have a tool that voters can go to and look at and see exactly what the performance of their legislator was. And in fact, we have on our website at npri.org, we have the spreadsheet calculations of how we came up with the final numbers, and you can go through and look at every individual bill that was evaluated and see the weighting placed on it and see how your legislator voted on each bill. So that could be extremely valuable for voters when they're trying to evaluate how well they were represented in Carson City this year.
All right, Jeff, very interesting. Thanks very much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure, Andy.
Of course, I want to thank all of you for tuning into this week's edition of Talk on Nevada. As always, I urge you to check us out on the web. npri.org is the address for more information on this topic and other private solutions to public challenges facing our silver state. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.